Hey guys, Michael Monotskainen here from Super Investors. I'm a real estate investor with over 60 rental properties worth around $20 million of real estate. 22 now. We just closed over 2.2 million in February alone. I specialize primarily in creative financing, raising capital, and especially mastering deal analysis. My favorite management strategy currently is co-living or renting properties out by the room. So with all that being said, we actually have a special live office hours today. We're not just going to go on a topic or answer questions. We're going to bring up an awesome Army officer. I don't know if you know, I'm an Army veteran, came out as a captain. We're going to bring in an Army officer to look at a creative finance deal, analyze it live together, and see what the best option is for the seller, who is actually also another Army officer. So we'll bring Zach up shortly. We're going to talk about kind of the motivation, why, like what kind of offers has the seller been receiving, why creative might be an option for him. So we'll break down kind of some of the motivations that make sense for creative financing. We'll actually look at the numbers. We'll do live deal analysis. We'll look at an actual property right now, and it's going to be a freaking sick one today. So with all that being said, let me bring up Zach. Oh, actually, let me screen share something real fast. If you are not part of the free Wealth Through Real Estate community, I'm going to drop the link right now. But if you are not part of it, you are massively missing out. I literally give you guys free deal analysis spreadsheets, whether it's conventional or creative finance. I give you checklists like the one Zach used to verify what information do I even need to have prepared so we can analyze these deals. I do live weekly Q&As like this one where you can bring up your questions and all that stuff. So if you're not part of that, then you are massively missing out on just the wealth of free resources. And for those that are maybe a little bit more advanced, maybe you are a real estate investor already with a few properties, maybe even just your first. You've been buying them using your own money, maybe just buying them from the MLS. Maybe you've never raised money before. Maybe you don't understand co-living or advanced management strategies, and you just are looking to scale your business the way that I have in less than 5 years to over $20 million of real estate. That's what I help out in the Super Investors community. Primarily catered towards those who are already real estate investors who also have some money set aside in reserves. I don't really like to teach people how to raise money unless they can manage their own personal finances first. I just think that's the way you prove that you can manage someone else's finances, your business finances, is doing your own personal finances. I provide that free education in Wealth Through Real Estate. The link is right here. But thank you. Okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate the free community is very insightful. Cannot imagine the value in the paid community. Looking forward to joining next month or the following. Thank you. Appreciate you. Appreciate you so much. That's what I want to do. I want to help people on all levels of their investing journey. For those that are more advanced, that's Super Investors. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. It's always in the description, but that is the Super Investors community. We go hard on mastering deal analysis, consistently finding great deals, typically off market from wholesalers, raising money for those deals, and then managing your properties and your business effectively so that you can scale, especially with the co-living management strategy, because you just are able to make so much freaking money off co-living and provide an affordable housing solution. One of these upcoming weeks, I'm going to be breaking down why I love co-living over every other management strategy, because that was a question that was asked. Why do I keep talking co-living when I own long-term rentals, mid-term rentals, short-term rentals, and co-living? Why do I only talk about co-living above all the rest? I want to break that down in detail for you guys and compare and contrast every single strategy and why co-living, in my opinion, is the best over everything else. So with that being said, this is Super Investors. If you want to see if you're the right fit for the community, go there, reach out to me. Let's connect and see if you're the right fit, and we'll talk. So with that being said, we're going to bring up my friend Zach. Hey, Zach, how you doing?
Hey, man. Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you being on here. Let me drop this comment.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So with that being said, I know you're kind of surprised. You're like, what the heck? I was not planning on being on Instagram, actually. So a little bit of both. But let's see.
Yeah, pardon the, I'm on a TDY trip for the Army. So I'm in a crummy hotel. I had to stuff a rag in the air vent because it vibrates so bad.
And for anyone who doesn't know, it's a temporary duty assignment. So he's
it's terrible.
Somewhere that he's not typically living. That's where he's at right now. Probably, you said for a training?
Yeah. I've been here since the beginning of October. It's going on 6 months. It's getting old.
I've never done that long. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's getting old.
Awesome. So Zach, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm an active duty Chief Warrant Officer 3. I fly the Apache Echo Model version 6. I grew up as a 18 series candidate, got hurt. That's special operations stuff. Got hurt in the course pipeline and a stint as an infantryman in the 82nd Airborne for a long time. my ultimate goal was to become a pilot. So here I am, been flying the Apache for a long time. And I've got about 3 years left on my active duty service obligation. And I love this job, but the Army's hard. You know, it's hard on our family life and all that kind of stuff.
Do you plan on doing the full 20 for a pension, or are you just going to get to your final?
We'll see. We'll see how this stuff goes.
I'll say my goal when I joined, like, cause I joined, I was already an engineer. I was like, I got my degree. I joined as an officer directly, commissioned directly in as one. My goal was to do 20. However, I discovered real estate investing before joining. During, I bought my first property and then got over 27 rentals in my first 2 years. I said, hey guys, I'm so thankful for my service. I chose to serve our country as a first generation American because this was the lottery ticket to be born in America, not Russia or Armenia, where my family is from, which is literally always in war and communism. I'm so thankful for being born in this country. I'm going to serve to protect our soldiers as much as possible. But then once I was able to not put my family at risk, like the struggles of military life, like you said, it's hard. It's hard for us as a service member. It's hard for our families. It's hard for the children and stability. It's hard for literally everyone. And you cannot grow your roots well in any one location. And we're always moving away from family. I'm so thankful that real estate helped me get out of that. And I think that's what your goal is. That's the potential right now.
I got into this very recently. So my investment experience is basically zero. I've been doing a lot of training. I've been watching a lot of videos. I joined another community, which you're familiar with. I have a basic foundational knowledge of kind of how things go. And in just kind of searching and looking around, I came across this deal. I don't even know if it's viable for me to do, right? I know creatively, creative finance is a potential thing there, but that's why I was introduced to you. And that's why we're going to help analyze the deal for everyone watching and help, teach me some stuff here. But my ultimate goal would hopefully be, this is my plan, right? I have 3 years before my ATSO ends. And my plan is to have myself set up where my income is replaced within the next 3 years, because I want to have a hard yes or no, like, am I going to stay in or am I not going to stay in?
Let me just go into that a little bit with you, because this is, for me, super investors, they know. The first thing we talk about, there's a whole freaking entire curriculum, and I provide that for free in Wealth Through Real Estate, because I think it's so important. Understanding what is your financial freedom number. Like, it's easy to say, oh, I'm going to be financially free. I'm going to have enough money to replace my income. But like, what is that for you? Is it, I want to replace my income, I want to cover my expenses? Do you have that number in mind?
I would like to replace my income. My base salary is just about, if I remember right, I think it's about $7,000 a month as a CW3.
Mm-hmm. And you're giving yourself $7,000 a month in the next 3 years, you said?
Yeah.
Awesome. Very
That would be ideal. I mean, then I could, not be out of pocket anything really. That would totally replace what I'm making now.
And the important part is, like, to have this number, like, it's not going to be right. And literally after your first or second deal, you're going to be there quicker than you thought. But it's so important, because my goal was to have 5 properties, 5 small multifamilies, roughly 15 units total, generate me around $7,500 a month. And that was going to make me financially free based on my expenses at the time and what I projected it would grow to.
Yeah, and that would be like after taxes, like $7,000 after taxes or something.
Well, luckily, when you're a real estate professional, you don't even pay taxes.
I'm
learning
that.
Yeah. And for me, like, the goal is 5 properties in 5 years, right? But then I got 60 plus properties, 20 plus thousand in cash flow in less than 5 years, right? But you need to have some goal. It needs to be tethered to something, because that makes it realistic and you can track that progress. And it's more exciting. Oh, cool. We got another 500. We got 1,000. We got this. We're making that progress. And what ends up happening is your growth is exponential. Mm-hmm. I'm an engineer by trade, so using the word exponential is disingenuous, but it's much faster than what you thought it would be. It's not 5 properties in 5 years. It'll be way faster if you continue to learn and grow. So thank you for sharing that, because that's foundational, is knowing at least the number you want to target initially, so then you can actually take the right steps to get there strategically. So let's get into the deal itself. I know we're going to figure out, is this even a deal or anything? We're going to analyze it, look at it, all that good stuff. My question to you is, what's kind of the situation? So, like, I can pull up the property on Zillow right now and present it.
The situation, right? It's in my town, right? It's just a couple of, it's maybe only a mile from my house. So it's something nearby. I have a lot of experience in trades, right? I did a lot of that before I was in the military or joined the military. So it's something that I can manage myself. I can do any kind of repair that's required if it needs it. It's in great shape. And the guy that is selling it, right? So it's a seller finance deal. And and he's also a military officer. So he's currently a captain. He just picked up major, and he's going to be instructing at West Point here pretty soon. But he only owes $189,000 on the house, and I comped the house at, it's listed for 329, and it comps perfectly with everything in the area, which means that it'll sell for that if we were to flip it for whatever reason. But the interest rate is 2.5%. And the PITI, the mortgage, is $1,178 a month. So why I think it's a good deal is all of the homes in this area, the cheapest rent that I've seen is about $2,000 a month. But for this size home, this stuff is always around $2,500 to $3,000. So it will absolutely cash flow. And this particular area is right in between Fort Stewart and Hunter Army Airfield.
Okay.
And it is the most sought after location in the Savannah, Georgia area for owning a home. It has the absolute best schools, period. And it's kind of right in the middle of everything. It's not in the hustle and bustle of Savannah, but it's not, it's only about 10 miles or so from Savannah. And for those of you that have or haven't been to Savannah, Savannah is an awesome place.
I'm actually hosting a meetup there this Saturday. So.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah,
I wish, man. I wish I could go, but I'm still TDY.
Oh yeah, you're TDY. So just some of the properties that we own, and one of the ones that we bought, a really awesome 3-unit, is in Savannah. So we're hosting a meetup at that CoLiving 3-unit.
I'll have to set up for the next one for sure. Hopefully I'll be done here in the next couple of weeks. So, but I just found the property out of sheer curiosity. Honestly, I was, I'm learning this stuff. I'm building a foundation of how this stuff works and just looking for things. That was it. I was just trolling the internet, looking for stuff. And I came across this. It's in a great place. It's a nice house. It's ready to rent. It could be updated in a couple ways, but for the most part, it needs zero work. And, with a 2.5% interest rate in a large room to cash flow, I was like, man, this seems really, really awesome. And then that's where it comes to interacting with you guys and learning what you guys think about it, if it's something worth looking into.
I saw some of the numbers that you presented, right? So the seller wants a decent amount down. So why is he even considering subject to? Like, why is that something, or why is he considering selling creatively, when in theory, he could just sell it conventionally, get all of his money up front instead of leaving the debt in his name and seller financing? Obviously, I know uniquely because of your relationship, all that good stuff, but why can he not sell it for this price? And if he can't, why doesn't he just sell the price?
I am not obviously I'm not an expert at all, but typically in these areas, I mean, you're very familiar with the whole move cycle of the Army, right? So
yeah, it's going to be a few more months for people.
Yeah, it's going to be a couple more months. And he listed it like maybe 50 days ago. And it's just outside of that move cycle. So a lot of military towns, for those of you that aren't familiar, right, that the Army generally moves people in like 2 cycles every year. And typically we move every 3 to 5 years. So there's always a large influx and outflux of soldiers going in and out of these areas. And when there's not a move cycle going on, a lot of times homes just kind of sit unrented or they don't sell until that move cycle happens. And that's why I think that it hasn't sold, simply because we're just outside of that move cycle.
Can I real quickly, just guys, so what I did was I pulled up PropStream. If anyone that does not use PropStream, I'm dropping a free trial for you. It's literally one of my favorite tools when it comes to creatively financed deals, to be able to look up mortgage information and all that. I just dropped it in the comments to show it real quickly, but go to PropStream. You get a 14-day, I think it's a 14-day or 7-day free trial. So try that product out, see if it works well for you. But that's the one I'm going to be looking at right now, while Zach continues to talk, to verify some of the mortgage information that is there. So yes, it estimates 2.6%. The loan amount originally was 209, and the estimated loan balance is 189. So not all this information is correct. The loan amount originally is correct, and the day the loan is due is correct. And I'll explain why that's important when we get to the analysis. The interest rate is not 100% correct. Usually it's an estimate. The loan payment is an estimate. And the loan balance is an estimate because it's just basing it off the original amount, how long they've been paying for it, and the estimated interest rate. If that's off, then it's off. What you told me was the interest rate on the loan is 2.5%.
Yep.
So let's start adding to the calculator. I'm going to share the Creative Finance calculator. So usually I can share the full screen. I can't do that right now because I just set up my new computer. So I need to approve that. It was going to close this whole thing, but I can do it tab by tab. So we're going to just start filling this thing out. This is, if you are not familiar, this is the Super Creative Finance Real Estate Investment Calculator. I'm going to be changing the name to something a little more simple, but basically this is the calculator that I built and use for every single one of the deals that I buy and own. This is a cheat code for deal analysis, various management strategies, especially with creative financing. And then also being able to determine if you were to raise money on it, you have your numbers. What does it look like for a prime money partner? Year 1, 5, 10, 20. If you have a prime money lender, like, does this deal still make sense?
Yeah.
But we're going to break this down in here. I have plenty of videos on how to use this thing. Check it out on YouTube, but let's start filling in some of the information here. So property address is 1. It is a 3-bed, 3-bath, 1,328 square feet. I saw it's a HOA, so I would never do anything outside of a long-term rental if it's an HOA, even if they do not have rental restrictions, because they can always change their rental restrictions. So we're going to analyze this as a long-term rental. We'll look at the rental estimate on Zillow. If you look at it, it says that in 2024, it was originally tried to rent for $2,150, reduced to $1,950, and then removed shortly after. I assume what they rented it for was $1,950. Is there still a tenant in place? Do you know?
I don't think there's a tenant in place right now. His first sergeant was actually trying to buy the house when the last tenant moved out. He said that they were also military. So I know that the rental prices down here are crazy. The house across the street from me, I live in a neighborhood just down the road, and it's basically the same quality, nice neighborhood with a pool and amenities and all that kind of stuff. It rents for $2,800 a month, and it's a smaller house.
Okay.
And a lot of the other places, the place next door to me rents for $3,000 a month. So
you think you could rent for a lot more than what he got? Let me just
I think right now, on a conservative estimate, you could rent it for $2,500.
And Rentometer says median is 2,200. This is not the end all be all. It's just a tool. We can quickly make the radius smaller, so it's like tighter to this specific area.
Yeah.
And we'll do just houses. It doesn't really matter what you put for rent. It'll just show you. And it's just a tool. We actually need actual comps. Oh, so it's even lower in this area. It's saying 2,100. I'm not saying this is perfect or not, but I'm saying based on what we saw on Zillow, that 2,150, it was listed and then was reduced to 1,950. Yeah. It wouldn't be surprising if this is closer in alignment, like when you look at the real numbers. But I don't know. We'd have to verify that stuff.
And I'm still learning here. I'm not the expert at all. So
yeah, for the time being, we can stick with the 2,100 and then we'll get more comps afterwards. So we'll just stick with that. Let's put the debt information. So you shared with me, new list is 334,250 is what he is trying to sell it for.
Yeah, he's putting a new roof on it now. He said it's going to cost him $10,500. And he said that he only expects to recoup about half of that in the sale. So he hasn't changed the listing price
more than what's on the listing, basically.
Yeah.
And part of it's creative too.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to the calculator.
And then just to answer your question, why he's considering seller finance,
and subject to, like both of them.
Yeah, just because I called him, he said that a lot of people have called him and made him really lowball offers on the house. I'm sure that there's a lot of wholesalers that would love to get it and flip it and, whatever, people want to rent it. But he said that nobody had really talked to him like a person.
Well, can I tell you what that means to me? Is that he wants the price of 334 or 330 and he's not getting that. Whether the property is not worth that or just the right people haven't seen it, I can't answer that. But the reason why he's willing to sell creatively is to get the price that he wants.
Yeah.
That is why he's wanting to sell creatively. But he's open to the concept with you because you have a relationship with him.
Yeah.
Right?
And he told me that he has an investment opportunity. We didn't really talk in detail on what it was, but he did say clearly that that's why he's asking for so much money up front.
Does he actually need $100,000? This is something I would talk to him about, because this $100,000 up front, regardless of the cash flow, is probably going to kill the deal either way.
I know, it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. I explained to him where I was in my journey and learning how to do all this stuff. And I told him that I wanted to talk to some people that are experienced, that can help me understand it. And then I would get back with him. So he's a reasonable guy, like he really is. And I think that if we were to come up with something that is attractive, that maybe meets in the middle, there's a possibility that he would be down for taking less up front.
And the big thing is going to be, Zach, is to understand exactly what he's looking to do with that money. Maybe he's going to get a 5% return. Well, if we gave him that 5% return, then that solves his problem with less steps. And he's got to secure to this house, or he needs $50,000 to go buy an RV for all we like. Understanding exactly what he's trying to do with it and why will then allow us to craft the perfect situation for his goals. Because a lot of people say, oh, I want 100, or I want this, or I want, like, why? Because we can only offer what the numbers allow us to offer. I'm just going to quickly just catch up to speed what I just did, a few things. You told me that he wants to buy it at 334,250. I put 334,000 because that makes the numbers more accurate with what we discussed. So $100,000 down payment. If I take like this is, you can put a percentage and it will tell you what dollar amount that is. He wants $100,000 flat is what he was looking for down. So when I just take this 100 divided by that is 29.9% down payment. That's really high. We could potentially, well, we'll see what works at the end. The sub 2 loan amount, the loan amount that he has existing that would be taking over the 2.5% is 189,000. What we're going to do right now is quickly recreate this loan to see how accurate that is. You can hard code this and just put that number, or ideally on the calculator, you just go and recreate it. So right here, the original loan amount, this is why it's important to have PropStream. We're going to see it's 209,715. So let's get 209,715 and put that in there. Did you catch that? Did you catch where I put it? Or where I grabbed that number from? Let me just share again. 209,715, right? We go to the mortgage transaction history and then 209,715. The interest rate you said is 2.5%. You said there's 26 years left on the loan. Let's just verify on PropStream how we can estimate that. So his loan is due 1/1/2051. It's a 30-year loan. Usually, like, well, it says it here, but usually most people's loans are 30 years. Some people are crazy and do 15 years, so they want to pay off their loan and pay less interest. That's great, but it makes the price super unaffordable, like the monthly cost. So 1/1/2051 means more than likely the loan started 1/1/2021, 30 years prior to the balloon date, right? When the loan is due. So we're going to say the first payment was 1/1/2021. And it says the monthly loan payment, not the PITI, but the principal and interest on the loan is $828.63. You said right here. So right here, like this auto calculates what the monthly principal and interest on the loan is. You said that the PITI, which is principal and interest on the loan, is plus the tax and insurance is $1,178.
Yes.
So that means his escrow, what's going towards taxes and insurance, is the difference. So escrow. I was supposed to create this little tab, but I just need to add it one time. So he's paying $349.37 every month towards taxes and insurance. Do you have a mortgage statement? We won't verify that now, but do you have a mortgage statement?
No, I don't. I just specifically asked him the numbers.
Okay, so if you have some of these numbers, this is how you estimate a lot of this stuff. So escrow is $349.37. We will say $100 a month is for insurance and the rest is for taxes. We're not going to get into the weeds. Let's see. If we'll maybe come back at the end and verify the taxes, because it will be going up as we buy it at a higher price than he bought it for. But for the time being, let's set insurance. We're going to set that as 100. So then taxes is the difference. We'll verify that number later. So what we're going to do in the calculator is this, because we recreated the loan right here, the sub 2 loan, we have the principal and interest of the loan right here. This is the seller finance piece, which in essence, the seller finance on a hybrid deal is the purchase price minus the cash to the seller minus the loan amount you're taking over is what is left to seller finance, which unsurprisingly is the $45,000 that you said. That's how that amount is determined. It's just purchase price, what you're paying up front, what you're taking over from the loan, or it's really purchase price minus the loan amount you're taking over. Then you're going to give them a portion up front and you're going to give them a portion through financing. Did he explain the terms he was looking for financing, or? No,
he said that he was flexible and whatever we come up with that makes sense, basically.
Okay. So this seems like that means this is good because we're understanding the seller. What do they really want? He wants the purchase price because he could have sold it to other people for lower or lowered his price because he has more enough equity. He wants this price. He wants
this price. And I don't, and I didn't know to ask him specifically why he needed that much, because once again, this is still a huge learning experience for me, but I will message him and ask him why.
Wait right now. Wait, and we'll get into that after, because there's a way to do it. There's a more intentional way to do it. We'll get to that at the very end, because we need to know what the numbers look like. And then just because at the end of the day, it's got to make sense for him to accept it. It's got to make sense for us as investors to buy it. Otherwise, it's got to be a win-win. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So we'll see.
Yeah, because with $100,000, he's going to have to pay short-term capital gains on that, and maybe he's factoring in
Did he live in it for 2 years?
I believe so. He
Then you
lived
won't
in
have
it for 2 years while he was
because of that.
stationed at
If you
Stewart.
lived in it for 2 of the last 5 years, and for military, I think it's like 2 of the last 8 or 10 years, then you don't have to pay short-term capital gains up to $250,000 if he's single, $500,000 if he's married. So
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not your CPA. I'm not anyone's accountant CPA. Do not take my word for this. Go Google it, do your own research, talk to your CPA. But I'm certain he probably won't have to pay taxes on this.
Okay.
So that's why for a lot of people who have equity and have lived in it, I recommend just sell it for a lower amount and just get all your money if you can. But we'll see. Like maybe there's another problem that we're solving for him that we don't know about right now.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so we're going to just disregard this stuff right now. This is just saying at 6% 30-year term, right? Doesn't mean we'll have to pay him for 30 years. We can balloon him in a couple years and pay off the loan amount in full. But assuming that this is the interest rate in term, this is what the monthly seller finance payment would be. This is the sub 2 payment right here. We would say for 1/2025, oops, my finger was one off, is the first payment to the buyer, technically just the start of next month, if we can get this done quickly. So then this is pulling over the information. This is the sub 2 loan payment, seller finance loan payment. There's no way to change the sub 2 loan payment. Like the loan amount is the loan amount. The amount that we're taking over and the amount that we're paying is what it is. The seller finance is where it's flexible. It might not even be viable to pay him anything. We just have to pay him everything in the future, or maybe no interest. I don't know. We'll see. Or we increase the seller finance payment and reduce this down payment, right? If we reduce this to 50,000, then the seller finance is increased by 50,000. Maybe that's a better strategy. Let's get some of the numbers put together and then we'll see what offers make sense. So seller finance loan amount is there for the time being. The payments, so the taxes we estimated was $249.37 a month. So we'll just go here equals 249.37 times 12. So that is roughly it's around $3,000 a year, $249 for the month. And then we said $100 for insurance, right? That's what we're estimating right now. What you would need to do as part of your diligence is actually get insurance quotes, verify the property taxes. We might have time that we can actually verify the property taxes and estimate what it would be. That's what this will help with. We can do a rough estimate. So let's just go to PropStream. Let me share this. If we go to tax information, in 2024, he paid $27.83 and was assessed at $96,000. That means he probably got some type of homestead exemption for being military, maybe, and paid less taxes than someone else normally would. We can't guarantee that. So this millage rate might be inaccurate once it's an investment property because you would lose that benefit. So we can't really use this to be accurate because, he bought it for over 200 and it's saying it's assessed at 96. We just have to look up their records for that. So we'll do that after. Yeah, that's why I don't go into it too early sometimes because you got more work to do. We'll just deal with that afterwards. We'll just estimate for now based on the current numbers and then update afterwards. And that's where seeing the mortgage statement is great because then we will have a better idea of how much is going towards insurance and how much is going towards property taxes. But these are our estimates. We're going to disregard some of this stuff in regards to utilities and all that. Usually for a long-term rental, you're not covering much of the utilities yourself. And because it's a VA loan, there's no property mortgage insurance, even though it's a low down payment. It's just the loan product does not have property mortgage insurance. Whereas a FHA loan or conventional loan with less than 20% will have property mortgage insurance. There is an HOA. We have that information here. $50 a month HOA. Cool. Got that from Zillow. We can verify it at PropStream. MLS details right here. Control F, HOA. So $588 for the year, right around $50 a month because that's $600 for the year. Perfect. So that confirms both are fairly accurate. So we're going to put $50 a month. Usually water, sewer, gas, electric, garbage. The HOA might cover some of that, or at least the tenant will when they live in it. Usually they're responsible for their own utilities and a long-term rental, as long as everyone else in the market's kind of doing the same thing. Landscaping may or may not be included. We'll just add $50 as a buffer to make sure at least the grass is cleaned up every month or two, right? It'll probably be like 85 to 100, but we'll just deal with that later. Property management, as estimates, is 10% of the rental income is property management. Vacancy, 8% translates to around 1 month of the year the property is vacant, which is a fairly good estimate. This is kind of the rule of thumb when you don't know the specific market fully. 8% is a good rule of thumb. Even if you know you can get it rented out all the time, it's still good to have that because you don't want to underwrite or analyze for the perfect scenario and then you don't get that and now you're bleeding money each month. It's better to underestimate your returns and then get better returns overall, which is accounting for these reserves. 10% for maintenance and CapEx. These are just standard property management, vacancy, maintenance, and CapEx. I can already tell as is if the rent truly is $2,100, and we'll get more rental comps. If it truly is $2,100, then you're losing $36 a month when you account for all the reserves, the HOA payment, the landscaping, and the seller finance component. And
Yeah.
if this property tax is even higher, then you're really going to be losing money each month. Let's see what that looks like here. So it's the same thing, right? Your income minus your expenses, minus your property management, minus your reserves. So if you end up if you have a property manager that you're paying 10% to, you have 8% vacancy, all that's based on the rental income. You have 10% going to maintenance and CapEx as reserves, you're losing $36 a month. If you don't have to use any of the vacancy or maintenance and CapEx, you're gaining $342 a month without reserves.
Yeah.
The problem with that is in your best case scenario, you have a 3.1% cash on cash return. Most investors are looking for 10+% because the stock market can get you 10%. So you want close to that amount. Then you also get the ownership benefits, which is kind of broken down in here. If we were just to assume all this was at 100, this would basically show your total return on investment would be 15.6% instead of the 0.3%, because you have, actually, if we just go here, you'll see it. If we just scroll down, this is not on the free calculator, right? These are extra features on the paid calculator, not on the free calculator. And this is primarily a tool. You can buy it on my website if you want, but it's better to just join Super Investors if this is something you're really looking to do, because then you actually learn how to use a lot of this stuff, not just have a spreadsheet. But you got your total cash flow, appreciation, debt pay down, tax benefits. You're getting all those returns, and it's negative cash flow, but the total return on investment when you get appreciation, debt pay down, taxes gets you an ROI of 15%. Ideally, I want 15% or higher ROI, but I want cash flow 10% or higher. Do you want me to go into that at all? Like, your cash on cash return is your annual cash flow divided by your entry costs. Because the down payment is, well, first of all, because the cash flow is negative, it's not really going to work, right? Like, no matter what you reduce the entry, it's not going to work. And because the entry is so high, even if it was positive and you're making $100 a month, it would be such a small number anyway.
Yeah, it wouldn't be worth it.
And then in this instance, he has no agents for sell by owner. It looks like it's turnkey. We can look at the properties more. There's going to be closing costs. I don't know if that $100,000, is he covering all the closing costs? Does he expect someone else to? If I'm giving someone $100,000, I'd expect them to cover the closing costs, or at least that portion of it. From there, there's transaction coordination, LLC formation, inspection, all that stuff. There's no wholesaler involved in this scenario, and you'd want a couple months of your expenses as reserves. So it'd bring it, you're giving him 100, but in reality, you're paying 115 to get into it, right? You want some money for reserves, closing costs, and really these are all closing costs. Your transaction coordinator, LLC formation, inspection, they're part of the overall closing process. But me as a buyer, I'm usually paying for that before my capital partner funds the remainder. So I need to get that reimbursed. So I just separate it more easily. This is primarily designed for buyers, right? And the way that I buy. Okay, so let's say we paid him $0. The first thing you can do is say, okay, in the best case scenario, because there's no ability for us to change the sub 2 loan amount we're taking over, the sub 2 interest rate, there's no ability to change that stuff. But the monthly payment itself is something, or the sub 2 monthly payment also, we cannot change it. Seller finance, we can change. Either we reduce this price to, let's say this is 100 and this is 189. We reduce this price to 295, right? That will reduce our seller finance amount and thus the payment. A lot of people are not very happy to do that. The first thing I try to do is reduce this interest rate, especially for him. He's not worried about the monthly income he's getting from it and all that. He wants his money down. And that will be the next thing we try to negotiate on, because he's expressed his interest. The cool thing about seller finance is there's a lot of levers. You can adjust the purchase price, the down payment, the seller finance, what the payment amount is, which is really the interest rate, the term of it. If there's a balloon, maybe there's no payments, maybe all of the money gets paid at the end. Like, there's a lot more levers. Where sub 2, you can't do that. That's where hybrid is nice, because you can actually renegotiate some of this stuff. And you can either say, let's go principal only, no interest, and that's $125 a month. See how that looks. That does bring your cash flow to $109 a month, but because the entry is so high, your cash on cash return is still low. So if we go even further and say, hey, let's put this down to 0, so you're going to generate another $125 a month in cash flow. That brings this as a long-term rental to $234, or because the entry cost is so high. Your cash on cash return is still very low. Even in the best case scenario, we have no reserves to account for. It's still very low. The thing we would want to do now is there's still question marks. We want to verify the property taxes, because it's probably going to be more than this. It's going to eat into that cash flow. And potentially we can actually get more rent than this $2,100, right? So we're going to look at both of those things. The fact that he was not able to rent it, just looking at the data here, because he was not able to rent it he listed it, and then within the same month reduced it $200 to $1,950. And this is what we're saying. Oh, this even doesn't work. It's been less than a year. Like, why would it go up now much higher? We don't know the circumstance or what happened. Maybe he listed it for $1,950 and rented it for $2,500. Like, we don't know that. We're just going off Zillow, and it's saying he listed it in July 9th, 2024 for $2,150, and then reduced it July 5th, 2024, and then it was removed, assuming that he rented it. And usually you're not renting it for more than what number you have here. It's pretty unusual. I've done it one time, but it was this weird thing, bidding war. I realized I actually wasn't supposed to do that. I didn't mean it just happened. There's a duplex, Alaska. A couple officers wanted to live in the other unit. It was really nice. And I just way underpriced it. And they taught me a lesson. So I'm going to just quickly look at the property to verify. Yeah, the photos are beautiful. Amazing property. Nice garage, great space for 1328. It seems very spacious nonetheless. Once again, like one of the solutions is to also increase your rental income. It's one thing to like, okay, let's see what it actually rents for. You can also do like short-term rental, mid-term rental, co-living, but you can't do that with this house. And I can quickly, the HOA already makes that pretty difficult to even try to pursue that as an option. We don't want to overpay for properties that only work with a management strategy, unless maybe it's co-living that generates like $1,000+ a month, right? It's like, okay, I'm willing to lose $200 if I have to remove it, if I have to go back to a long-term rental because I get ownership benefits, but I'm making $1,000 to $2,000 a month as co-living. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to do that because this property's 3-bed, 3-bath and 1,300 square feet. It's not even big enough for co-living, but the HOA also makes that very tough. So all we can do is see if maybe this is wrong. And we can do that by looking at Zillow. So let's get the rental comps and we'll do the property taxes. Let me explain why we're doing that now. We've already said the seller finance is no payments. There's no payments at all, right? And there's no payments at all on this $45,000. He'll get that in 5-10 years, potentially, whenever there's an opportunity to get that for him. But did he say when he would want the loan to be done?
No, we probably talked for 20 minutes or so. There was a lot of Army talk. You know how it goes when you get Army guys together.
Yeah.
But yeah, we basically ended at me talking with you guys, figuring out what makes sense, if it's something that we can come up with that makes sense.
I can tell you right now, if it was $2,100 and this property taxes was right, and there's no payment on the seller finance, the only logical next step is to reduce this down payment.
Right.
It's going to increase the seller finance, right? And that's not going to be paid until in the future. You could make a payment at 0% and see if that, like, that's kind of what you're tinkering with. In this scenario, this is so big that even if you had like just reducing this entry, assuming no payments to, that's kind of the cool part of this calculator. You know, this might actually, so this accounts for the payments. Just for now, this is not what I recommend someone to do. But this, even if you reduce the price essentially to 283, which means this down payment is 85,000 instead, and there's much lower seller loan. So actually, let's not use this. This is assuming you're reducing the purchase price, which is then reducing the down payment because it's the same percentage as this is, right? It's the same percentage, same ratio. Then the seller loan also goes down. Let's instead say we're going to reduce the down payment, but we're going to add the seller finance, like we're going to add that to the seller finance amount that's paid in the future, right? This is assuming that's all going down together. Let's not go that route. Let's just assume, because I feel like he's the kind of guy, he doesn't want to reduce this and he wants the 100K. He's not probably going to get the 100K, but let's see how it looks when you keep the purchase price, reduce the down payment, add more to the seller finance loan with no payments. So it's not affecting our cash flow to reduce the down payment, right? Because that would mean a higher seller finance loan, more monthly payment, but it's not because we're making no payments. We're just reducing the entry. So now our entry went from like 113 to 93, right? Now it's at 3%. So if we just keep going this route, we can get a rough idea at no payments at all. Where is this potentially viable? But the more you add to this, the seller finance loan with no payments, and you're going to need a balloon at some point to pay him back that amount. At some point, since say, well, I got $95,000 just sitting with you, making nothing, no interest, no payments. You can have it accumulate interest, but now I'm getting really advanced. So like what I could do is have this 95,000 be building interest, but I'm not making any payments on it throughout that period. So he's basically your private money lender or a portion of it as long as you get him at a lower rate than what you could get from a bank, because then you might as well just get a new loan from a bank, or what you would be paying a private money lender. This is a viable strategy. We're getting really advanced. I'm gonna keep it simple right now. And this is like super investor talk, right? Everyone watching, they're not necessarily at that right now. I don't want to like go too crazy. So if we reduce this, so we reduce it all the way down to 50,000, right? A swing of $50,000, adding 50K more to the seller finance, even though there's no payments and no interest right now. Even then, it's only generating $234 a month, and the cash on cash return is 4.4%. It's just because long-term rentals that generate a few $100 a month cannot withstand anything over like $20,000, $30,000 down, or like an entry of over 50, if not even less than that. That's why, I mean, I can teach people to go and do what I did when I started, which was buy long-term rentals, and it worked because interest rates were really low and I was doing low down payment options and all that. But in today's market, that doesn't work, right?
Right.
That's what I do a lot of co-living, because I can take that same property and make $1,000 to $2,000 a month, not this property, but a property with a similar entry, and it now starts to make a lot of sense. Long-term rentals, a good one is like $100 a month, $100 to $200 a month. As the entry increases, like if it's $100 a month, for example, $100 times 12, so 12,000, or 100 times 12, $1,200. You would only be able to take that divided by $12,000 to get a 10% cash on cash return. Let me explain that logic just quickly. If you're making $100 a month, for every $100 you're making, you can put around $12,000 entry to get a 10% cash on cash return. Does that make sense? So if this was $2,400, or if this was $200 a month of cash flow, you cannot get a higher than 10% cash on cash return if your entry is over $24,000, right? So it's just like non-viable. It's like mathematically just non-viable.
Yeah.
When you're talking about generating, $1,800 a month, even if your entry is $100,000, you're getting a 21% cash on cash return. Why these advanced strategies tend to work much better. There we go. So your entry is 100,000. This is assuming this is a 7-bed rent by the room. This is just all fake numbers, right? But you can see if you're making a bunch more cash flow, you can withstand a much larger entry and get a higher cash on cash return, which makes this a great deal. That's not really viable because you're really limited to how much money you can make as a long-term rental. And when you have entries that are over $24,000, $36,000, you're not making $400 a month. You can't enter it for over $48,000 mathematically to have over a 10% cash on cash return.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So all we're going to do now is we're going to look at these rental estimates and just see, like, even at 50,000, it doesn't work. Let's see if we can get a better rental estimate than this $2,100. So the logical route to do so is, let's get this listing twice. Oh, I'm going to get us on Zillow again.
Yeah, it looks like the place literally across the street is listed for $2,400 a month to rent.
Perfect. For rent. Well, that doesn't mean anything what it's listed. Well,
right.
So we're going to do, let's see where
it's got to actually be renting at that in order to.
Right. And that's the problem. That's the data on like Rentometer, is what it was listed for and then what it was removed at, right? It's looking at previous data. What you were looking at on Zillow is what it's being listed for. All you can look at is see, is there like applicants and views and all that? We'll do that.
Yeah, I've learned how to comp a property to like figure out as is value and all that kind of stuff, but I haven't done it with renting stuff yet. I haven't been taught that or learned how to do that.
I think it's literally right here. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Oh, okay. So we're a little off. It's Red Oak.
It's in that corner there, I think, on Red Oak. Yeah.
I don't know why this community has all the rentals and this one has literally nothing, but nothing that's 3-bed. So let's not use exact match. Let's say 2 bedrooms or more. And let's look at the one, like you said.
Yeah, that's the one right across the street, actually.
4-bed, 2-bath, 1,672 square feet. So it's a bigger house.
Yeah.
Additional bedroom, not an additional bathroom, but additional bedroom. It's not even available, honestly, until April 15th. So they're just now pre-listing, which is great. It was on for one day and they have a contact. That's great. So at least someone has already reached out within the first day, but it's too soon. Let's see what it rented for before. So 12/18/2023 was listed for $2,350 and then rented out. Why? Well, that's a winter move cycle, right? For the military.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. It's a military member because that's about 2.5, 3-year move cycle there from 23 to 25.
All right, let's show people a cheat code. So let me go to BH calculator.
Yeah,
so I'm going to show you guys something. This is your basic housing allowance calculator, basic allowance for housing. You can literally look up what do military get in military areas. You can literally see what do they get, and you just say,
for me, as an example, as a W3 station in Hunter Army.
I wouldn't use an example. I'd use an E5 as an example.
E5, yeah. I don't. For me, I think it's $2,600 a month.
31324. So I'm going to show you guys how to use this. So 31324. We're going to use it. The thing is, like, if you're a younger enlisted soldier, unless you're like married or have kids or something, like you're pretty much staying on base and you don't even have the option for BAH.
Yeah.
Or like the base is full, like there's some exceptions, but really once you get to that sergeant level is when it's much more common for people to be on off-base housing. But the idea is they're off-base housing, so that this is what it went to. So it's 2163 with dependents, 1824 without dependents.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a much nicer, you said this is a nicer school area and all that. So the people that
the only military members that really live in Richmond Hill, you're looking at, I mean, my neighbor is a sergeant major.
Okay.
You're looking at first sergeants, you're looking at senior E7s, you're looking at
Let's go
captains.
E7, right?
Yeah.
And when you are on base housing, this whole amount, 2322, will be taken away from you no matter what. Like that's what they take, but that covers your utilities, that covers everything, correct?
Yeah.
So that covers everything for you. I've never actually lived on base housing. As an officer, I had the option to get off right away.
Yeah. And then the other option is Hinesville area for Fort Stewart. And it is a junky, army town, just like Fayetteville, North Carolina, or you know how it is. Like
I'm actively selling one in Hinesville,
Yeah.
actually. So if you want that junky house, no, it's a great house. But it's
No, I'm not saying that they're all junky houses, but
it's a different demographic of
yeah.
tenant. Absolutely. So 2322. So honestly, that 21-ish, 22-ish would leave them at enough where they're kind of neutral and have a better housing option. From my experience, no military member wants to pay more than their BAH covers.
Right.
So at the most, they don't want to pay more for the rent, the utilities, and all that stuff than what this covers. This further shows me if it is military, we can quickly look at, and I'm not saying bank on officers, but let's see. I'm gonna go back to this. I'm gonna say, okay, let's see what a brand new officer. Most brand new officers don't want to live on their own in a three bath house, but let's just see. So once again, 2184. So they're the same as the E5 roughly. So let's just remember. So this is really showing me that this 21 might be fairly accurate to what people are comfortable paying if the military is the play. We didn't look up all of the rental options. So we saw this 2400. This could potentially be viable, but it's just too soon to say, like, is this going to rent for this amount? But we do know previously it did rent for $23.50 within 2 days. It was rented at that price. And it's bigger, but it's not like so different. And they're neighbors, right? So it's roughly the same house, but that extra bedroom is definitely a few $100s worth of value. A 3-bedroom is maybe 2 kids. 3-bedroom is 3 kids potentially, right? So, or like there's your office, although it's, usually military. So, all right. And it looks similar. You got to make sure that the amenities are similar. Like if one's stainless steel, one's white, very different. If one is LVP flooring, another one's carpet, or one has stairs and the other one doesn't have, like, it's like doing your comps for after repair value for what the property would be worth. Similar for rent. You want to make sure it's similar enough. You want to make sure the backpacks are similar enough. What did I say? Backpacks? The backyards are similar enough.
Backyards.
So for example, I got distracted by that like red flags thing. That was I've never seen that before. So you want to make sure that when you look at this property, it's very well groomed. It's not fenced backyard. So I think the other one was. So there's the washer dryer. Okay, good stuff. Backyard's beautiful, looks really nice, just not fenced. So I don't know what the HOA is. I don't know why this one house is not fenced. It may or may not make a difference to people. I wouldn't want a not fenced backyard. I guess on military bases, you're used to sometimes not having the backyard, but let's see if there's another. And a lot of these are much less, right? Let's look at 3 bedrooms exact and see what they're going for. 18, 18, 19, 18. I don't know what this area is compared to this one. These look more like townhome style, smaller. Actually, these are the same house sizes.
Those in the beginning of the neighborhood in that little kind of loop, I think most of those are townhomes.
But the problem is there's so many 3-bed, 3-bath options that are bigger square footage, even though it's a townhome and you're sharing a wall. There's so many at $1,800 to $2,000. Like, why would someone pay several $100s more? Maybe someone would, but this isn't working against your best interest, if that makes sense.
Right, exactly. That makes sense.
Because it's like, well, yeah, I would want to save if they're getting $2,100 to $2,400 of BAH, I want to save a couple $100. It's not as ideal, but at least I'm off base. I'm saving more money, and that, like, this is not great for the fact that, and these are sitting at these prices, right? Yeah. It could be that 50 days, 6 contacts. I like to see a lot more views and a lot of applications, not just contacts. We can just take a quick look, but this is what you're doing, right? You're just looking at these and saying, how long has it been listed? They've changed how they do it. They used to say like how many applications. They don't do that anymore. But yeah, these are the townhome style. So what I'm trying to say is I don't feel comfortable saying, oh, we can get more than 2,100. I think maybe on the higher end, we get 2,100 based on the property that's available, based on BAH, based on what the competition is nearby. Obviously, they offer less, but I understand military mindset. I want to save my BAH. I don't want to exhaust all of it, right?
Right. That makes perfect sense.
So I wouldn't want to say, oh, I could probably make up to 3,000, and then you're losing several $100s a month, and you gave $100,000, and even at $50,000 down, no interest, no payments, right? There's seller finance of $95,000, but there's no interest and no payments on it, and you're going to pay them at some point in the future. It still isn't really viable,
right?
And then for me, as someone who raises money, this $234, I can't split that with someone and make it worthwhile for them.
No,
if I go to the using other people's money tab, and we go, 50% each. Well, their cash on cash is 2.2%. My partners want at least 7-8%, and I want 10+%, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, is this even a good deal? No, it's creative. And that's the hard part. When there is so much equity and there's a sub-2 loan, that's the hard part with these hybrid deals, to make them work, especially as a long-term rental. And because of the location, the HOA, it's going to be hard, and the size, it's going to be hard to assume another management strategy is viable. And my recommendation for him, and I'm more than happy to have this conversation, for you, I would say, cool, this was a great learning practice. Maybe understand, maybe he says, you know what, fine, I don't need the money. Give me 20,000 down. And then give me this 125 in a couple years, whatever. Maybe that starts making sense. And then you get it to 8%. Maybe that's viable, right? It's not going to increase your cash flow because your down payment is lower. It's going to increase your cash on cash return because, it's your annual cash flow, right? We didn't change that, but we decreased your entry cost, which makes this cash on cash return higher. Maybe that starts becoming viable. I doubt that's the case with him because he has so much equity. And he has the benefit of not paying capital gains taxes because he's lived in it for 2 years. Even if he's only lived in it for 1 year, he would be able to still get some prorated amount of capital gains tax exemption. And he's got his VA loan tied to this. I would say, dude, just sell this thing. You got to not be crazy. If people don't want to buy it for $330,000, it's like sell it for less. Get all your money up front, free up your VA loan to go buy another property. This time, house hack a small multifamily if you really want to get some good returns. Get all your cash flow, put it in that other investment, free up your VA loan to do more with it, and just lower this price. I'm not saying lower it for $250, but lower it to what is reasonable based on what his agent is saying. If the Zestimate is 301, and I'm not a Zestimate guy, right? But if it's 301, people don't want to overpay based on a Zestimate. The Zestimate's already on the higher end. So maybe if he lowers it 10, 20, 30K, maybe it's much more viable. He'll still end up with, he's got 189. He would still end up with, let's just set that to 0, and we reduce this to $300,000. So I'm assuming he does this, he lists it for 300,000. There's this loan amount that's getting paid off. He'd end up with almost $100,000 that he wants, all tax-free, and his VA loan to go do something better with.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation to this guy. I'm the guy who talks myself out of lots of deals because I care about the people that I'm working with. It's got to make sense for them and their goals. We don't know what his goals are fully yet. But I do know the advantages that he has with freeing up his VA loan, not paying taxes on whatever he gets up front. All that is more viable than what we could offer him with maybe 20 to 50K, no payments, no interest, to maybe somewhat make it a deal for us. It's just not a deal. It's not a deal in this sense. What you could do is, if he wanted to sell it creatively, what you could do is lock this up at reasonable terms, 100K down, whatever, and then have him basically wholesale it to an end buyer. Or wrap it an end buyer, but maybe not wrap it, but just put it under contract with these great terms and then sell it to that other sergeant or whatever, because you're just getting paid for your knowledge. Yeah. You're getting paid for your knowledge of structuring this deal and middlemaning it for the end buyer. That is a way that you can get paid in this transaction. Some people recommend wrapping it, so buying it under the creative terms and then selling it to someone else at higher interest rate, or I just don't know if that's viable for this one. It may or may not be. That's not my space. My space is buying great cash flow and rentals, raising the money for it, and then earning, $1,000+ a month on those from cash flow, and then, 5 times that a month in ownership benefits. I think this one for him would make more sense for him to just sell it traditionally and just lower his price because of the advantages that he has with. But what I would like to do, let's understand what he really wants, and let's just explain what his options are. Let's just help him out and see if what he's really trying to accomplish. And that is what I would recommend. Any questions about any of that stuff? I know that was a lot, so you might have to watch the replay, but we went through a lot of topics right there.
Yeah, it was good. It was awesome. There was a lot more that I hadn't thought of that, take into account in terms of expenses. You have to work in there that minimize the cash flow.
You could have said, I'm going to self-manage. I don't need to account for property taxes. I'm going to, the property's turnkey. Maybe I'll do less maintenance and CapEx. Oh, the property's never going to be vacant. You could do all that, but you're also potentially setting yourself up for failure. Yeah. And that couple $100 spread goes from a great cash flow and deal to losing money every month and paying a bunch of money to then lose money every month. It's there's just better opportunities out there, and trying to force deals that may not make sense. Just to show you guys, if we were to say, I'm going to self-manage, right? So it's $210. You just bought yourself a $210 a month job. Maybe that makes sense for you. And I sometimes self-manage. Long-term rental is not that hard, but it is a job. It takes work. And when you're gone, it's is this something you want to deal with, especially while active duty? Not necessarily. Oh, the property's never going to be vacant. I don't need to account for that. Oh, maintenance and CapEx. Oh, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. I don't need to set aside money for reserves until you got to replace the roof. Thankfully, he did that. He did some of the big expenses. Turnkey, this would then, if you set this up, and assuming the 100 still assuming no payments. Why am I keep off the 0? Assuming no payments. Maybe then it's an 8.7%, which is not, that's the cash on cash return without reserves, right? Same concept, because we got rid of the reserves. Also got rid of the property management. Then you can maybe make it work, but it's like you're just taking more risk. It depends on your risk tolerance and how involved you want to be with the property. If you want to self-manage it, if you want to deal with the vacancy and pay out of pocket when it becomes vacant, if you want to cover a roof replacement, appliances, flooring, paint, plumbing, all of that stuff, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do so. What we didn't talk about was maybe a method where you buy it and then the seller, you buy with a new loan and the seller gives you money back to cover your entry costs, right? So you would get maybe that $45,000 what he finances after. But when you change the interest rate from 2.6, if it barely works at 2.5% with no seller finance payment, it's definitely not going to work with $300,000 loan at 7%, right? So I already know that's not going to work.